Okay. Looks like I'm having trouble. Okay. Okay. Technical difficulties. I'll just describe it for you. Um, Whenever I do like a joint or I have a guest on the show, then I have to completely refigure my system, and then it throws everything off. So I have to fix that. But so apologies for that. But basically, there were some conservative outlets, some alt-right news outlets that picked up this article that I had written. And so one is from the Daily Caller. And on this, it says U.S. Islamic scholar praises Brunei's death penalty for homosexuality. U.S. Islamic scholar praises Brunei's death penalty for homosexuality. So this is something that was published, and it's about the article. It's about on MuslimSkeptic.com. First of all, calling me an Islamic scholar, which is funny. I was joking about that they're giving me ijaza. They're calling me Islamic scholar, which I'm not, but funny note. And then they also mischaracterized things as well, because in the article, yes, I'm praising hudud. Yeah, of course. As every Muslim should. Every Muslim should praise hudud. And every Muslim should be happy when the Sharia is implemented somewhere in any aspect. If a country is going to ban riba, if a country is going to implement zakat and enforce zakat from Muslims, or implement jizya, or implement any aspect of the Sharia, that is a good thing, right? If a country is going to implement more separation of the genders for modesty purposes, these are all good things, okay? And we have to have a nuanced understanding of exactly how these things are being implemented. But in general, we have very happy sentiments. Even if the country in question might not be perfect in many other ways, that's fine. Like, praising one aspect of a country doesn't mean you approve of everything that country has ever done and every aspect of the leadership of that country. No, that's not what is implied by that. And the Muslims who attacked me or said that, oh, Daniel is praising Brunei, but Brunei has so much corruption, Brunei has so much evil that the rulers have done this and that. Okay, so I wasn't criticizing, or I wasn't praising everything that the Sultan has done or his family has done. No, I'm praising one specific aspect of what he has done, which is implement hudud for these kinds of crimes like zina and same-sex behavior. So that's one point. And again, these Muslims are fine. They're praising the government all the time, the U.S. government. They're praising the governments of many non-Muslim countries for a variety of policies. Remember, like, Obama as president, how much praise did he receive from Muslims who would praise every other action that he did? But if you pointed out, oh, what about his drone policy where he's actually killing Muslims and he's actually increasing surveillance of Muslims, and he is detaining Muslims in Guantanamo Bay, and he is destroying entire countries through war, like Libya, where he gave the green light for the invasion of Libya. All of these kinds of things. Oh, well, no, of course, we're not praising that, but we can still recognize all the good that Obama supposedly does. So this is their double standard. But if you praise a country, a small country, very small, with a population less than 500,000, for implementing hudud, then you're being hypocritical, because you're praising him for the hudud, but you don't recognize that they also have problems in that country. So this is people who are missing the point. Anyway, back to this article. It's also inaccurate to say that Brunei is implementing the death penalty for homosexuality, because that's not true. They're not really implementing the death penalty for homosexuality. As I've explained before, when it comes to the had, that is on the basis of same-sex behavior. right? So same-sex behavior is different than, quote unquote, being a homosexual. What does it mean to be a homosexual? Being a homosexual means that you desire, you have lusts or sexual attraction to the same sex. Men for men, women for women. Okay? This is an identity, like the homosexual. You're homosexual or you're heterosexual. These are terms that do not really have analogs within the Islamic vocabulary and the Islamic paradigm. So this is very important because we can recognize that certain people have same-sex desires. They are attracted sexually to the same sex. This is a shahwa. These are amongst their shahawat that an individual can have. But we don't define the person according to their shahwa, right? You can have any number of shahawat. You can have any number of desires and lusts, right? What if someone has a lust for a very specific race? It's possible. Like you are turned on sexually by a specific race. Is that your identity? Like, do we have to invent a term for that? Do we have to invent a concept of that? And then you're a community, right? All the people who are attracted to Asians, okay, sexually attracted to Asians. Okay, then you're a specific sexual orientation. You have your own community. You have your own whatever. We need to have whatever. So that doesn't really make sense, and that's not really done when it comes to all the other kinds of shahwat that people have. And really, the shahwa itself, we know that when it comes to people's desires, some desires, if you engage in them and you continuously feed those desires, they will take you into this spiral of self-destruction. And one of those kinds of desires is same-sex desires, where if you act on the same-sex desire and you are, having this kind of sodomite sex, that is going to lead to destruction. Okay? And Allah is describing this in the Quran when He calls Qawm Lut engaged in israf. They're musrifin because they are going beyond the bounds that Allah has set. And they're not satisfied with what Allah has made permissible for them. They constantly want to push. They constantly want more. They constantly want more variety for sexual behavior. Okay, this is feeding the shahwa by violating what Allah has commanded. And this is what shaitan drives us to do. To constantly go into perversions. And I've described this in detail. And when it comes to pornography addiction, this is something that is recognized. People who study the addiction of people who are addicted to pornography will note that they develop a tolerance, right, for the kind of pornography that they're watching, and they need more variety because now, like a drug, okay, after a certain level of usage of a drug, then your body develops a tolerance for that drug, and you don't get the same kind of high. You don't get the same kind of feeling that you used to do when your body still hadn't gotten acclimated to that drug. So then you have to up the dosage of the drug, or you have to start taking other more powerful drugs to give you that same kind of feeling, that same kind of high. So this is what addictive behavior does to you. Is it drives you to keep going, wanting more and more and more and more, and then you're destroyed, right? You'll overdose, you'll become a heroin addict, a meth addict. Your whole life will be destroyed because of that substance addiction. Well, the same thing with other kinds of desires. The same kinds of thing happens when it comes to other desires. And those who study addiction, the psychologists who write about addiction, have noted that when it comes to pornography, that's also the case. More extreme types of pornography, more extreme types of things that a person needs to get that same level of feeling and arousal that they were getting from before. So they push and push and push. And that's why a lot of people fall into same-sex desires even. Okay? They didn't have any desire for the same sex in the past, But then because of continuous exposure to pornography and the addiction to pornography, then, okay, well, maybe that's something interesting. Okay. I've already seen all kinds of acts done and done to between men and women. Well, maybe let's see what else is on offer. Okay. Men and men, women and women. And then even more and more and more. So this is destruction. This is self-destruction. And this is what israf can refer to, is that you're not satisfied with what is available and what is pure and permissible. You have to keep pushing it and pushing it. So in this article that I wrote, I describe some of this. I describe how same-sex behavior is so destructive for an individual. It's destructive for society as a whole. And that's why Allah in His wisdom has sent this as had. And the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned the had for this kind of behavior. So it's the behavior, not, being homosexual. Okay, because it's possible, again, that someone has these desires but doesn't act on them. In fact, controls the desire, prevents himself from acting on that desire, tries to get rid of the desire somehow, or control it, manage it. So those are all praiseworthy things that Allah will reward a person for bringing their nafs into control, bringing their shahwa into control. It's not death penalty. So this is what the average non-Muslim is thinking, maybe, when they hear about the laws in Brunei. They think, oh, well, there's these squads, police squads that are going around. Oh, you're a homosexual? Okay, get in the car. We're going to go stone you. Right? Or we're going to go execute you. No, this is a Orientalist, ignorant fantasy that they have about what the Sharia is and what Islamic law is. If they understood these kinds of destructive effects and consequences that we're seeing around us, we're seeing the destruction of this kind of israf and this kind of sexual deviance and perversion and the feeding of desires. We're seeing the problems all around us. This is affecting our children. It's affecting the moral character of society. And so on and so forth. So if they recognize that, and some of them do, some of them recognize these problems, then how do we stop it? How do we prevent it? How do we curb it? And we curb it through penalties, through legal consequences, through punishments. These are all deterrents. It's deterring this kind of behavior for the benefit of society, for the preservation of society, for the preservation of humanity. So these are the kinds of things I discuss in the article. But again, Facebook thinks that that's hate speech and bigotry, and so it bans it. Right. So this article is on the Daily Caller. Let me read you a quote from it. Okay. Daniel's praise for the death penalty for homosexuality in Brunei seems to conflict with comments he has made in the past concerning violence against LGBT individuals. And then he quotes me as saying, I have been clear that bullying, assaulting, or indiscriminately killing people merely because they self-identified as or are presumed to be gay is something Muslims around the world should oppose according to their religious principles and traditions. This is something that I wrote almost 3 years ago. So am I contradicting myself? Am I contradicting when I say that I'm against bullying and assaulting and killing people just because they, self-identify as something? No, there's no contradiction here, right? Because what did I just say? It's about the hudud are about actions. Someone who behaves in a certain way, and that's proven in a court of law, and there's a procedure for determining whether someone is guilty of committing a certain kind of sexual crime, and they're convicted of that in a court of law that is operating according to the Sharia, then, okay, that's the action, that's the behavior. That's not the same thing as indiscriminately killing or going around and assaulting people. No. That's not what Brunei is implementing. That's not what any country that's implementing Sharia should be implementing, because that's not a part of the Sharia. So there's no contradiction there. The problem is, again, going back to the idea of homosexuality, where does this concept come from? Does it have an analog in Islam? And the answer is no. Okay, we don't have an analog for homosexuality, and we don't have an analog for heterosexuality. Okay, I'm not a heterosexual, for example. I'm not straight. Why? Because I don't define myself according to sexual desires. That's not an identity that I take, and Islamic law, the Sharia, doesn't operate on the basis of those categories. So this makes a big difference. Okay? It's part of, this is part of the normalization of same-sex behavior, that they've made it into an identity because they want to liken it to race. Just like we cannot be, and people accept generally, as Muslims, we accept that to be bigoted towards a race, that is incorrect, and that is illegitimate discrimination. That's bigotry. Okay, people generally accept that moral claim or that moral principle. But if we want to get people to accept same-sex behavior and start normalizing this in society, well, let's make it into kind of like a race. We have the race of homosexuals who have been oppressed for years of oppression. Okay? These are the kinds of tricks, right, and strategies that they've used in discourse just by defining words in a certain way and pushing these kinds of words and concepts onto people. This is how they control the way that you think. Okay? And so going back to the ayat from Surah Al-Baqarah, they claim that they are muslihun. They're doing islah. They're helping, right? But in fact, they're spreading fasad. They're spreading corruption and evil.